Find the guy that has some humility and who's also been there and done that, who's also the guy you still want to be your check-in when you're in the fight for your life. That's your role model.
I think you talked about one of the best topics about training smart and not necessarily hard. Because again, you can run, but you might be running in place. You're not gonna have any forward progress. And basically the whole conversation, we talked about training efficiently, training optimally, and training for really what's realistic.
You can call these officers soft, but it's the officers we're dealing with today.
Episode 1. Episode 0.5. Episode 0.5. I didn't know I was doing an intro. I thought we were just going to get right into it.
You can get right into
Let's get right into it. That's what I'm talking about, baby.
The no intro podcast.
This is no.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. From your standpoint, Scott, from an instructor experience standpoint, there's obviously a lot of great people out there that are doing some really good things. How do you feel as if experience plays a role in the level of instruction that they're giving to cops that are coming to these courses?
Yeah, so experience matters, but it can be put in different perspectives, right? I'll say that, personally, the best courses I've been a part of were put on by someone that has done the job, the same job I've done or similar, but they also did whatever they're teaching at a extremely high level as well by anyone's metric. That's my personal experience, and that's not me saying that I haven't been to other courses that they weren't law enforcement officers and they still didn't put on a phenomenal course. I didn't take massive things from it. And I think it's the depth of the course that typically stands out. The instructors that have done the job before and they're also masters in their craft can foreshadow and relate to the end user, the student, better than the civilian or whatever they are who hadn't done the job, but they're just teaching a technique or concept without being able to frame it in a way that is relatable to the end user, the officer. Also, they can add, oftentimes I found other tidbits. So like an example of that is combatives in a CQB environment. I get entangled with a person as I'm clearing a room in a team environment. Oftentimes we see teams all jump on this guy because everyone wants to get in the fight and help their buddy. But how many danger areas or dead space are being left uncleared while that's occurring? And can that one guy probably handle this guy? More than likely, yes. So that's an example of like, hey, there's a bigger picture here. We need to, and if you've done the job, you're able to see that higher elevation look than just a specific technique or concept that you're trying to teach. I think again, when you're narrowing in on the fundamentals or something, or a very narrow concept, there are masters out there that have never done the job that I've learned a ton from as well. Jiu-Jitsu instructors, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructors would be a good example of that as well. Any black belt or high-level Jiu-Jitsu guy can teach you how to do a basic mount escape. That's great. Law enforcement can use that. Now, where I think having experience on the job maybe changes that lens a little bit, we can also teach that. However, we may add, think about all these gear considerations you have. Think about the environment that we find ourselves in oftentimes, uneven surfaces, curbs, working around vehicles. If I mount escape, am I mount escaping into traffic? All these other things that we deal with, that's another example that I've found personally, being in law enforcement for 14 years full-time, and have gone through a ton of tactics and combatives courses throughout my career.
Sure. And I think even from a patrol perspective as well, you talked about pig piling on there and just making a mess of the situation. And I would even say to people that are teaching without experience is potentially negligent to an extent, meaning they've never put themselves in that type of position. So when they teach cops, are they just teaching a theory that they think works? And then they're using someone else to then vet their own curriculum. Some would say that's potentially an integrity issue, somewhat selfish to an extent of like, well, you've never done the job, put yourself in this position, but yet you're going to teach people how to do this. I think that could be a mixture of sales and a mixture of just like trying to mark themselves in a different light to get a different, demographic of audience. So there's a little bit of controversy there.
Yeah, I'll say if you're teaching something and you haven't done it operationally in a contested environment, it's just a theory.
Right.
Out in the real world, that's the highest level of pressure testing. So until that's occurred, everything's just a theory. And that sometimes that's all we have to rely on at first. But at some point, and and law enforcement has enough high level guys in it in all these high liability areas, or like shooting, combatives, driving, you know, all these high liability areas that are by anyone's metric experts in their craft. They've made themselves that they're not, it's not a theory to them. They've actually deployed these things operationally. And that goes a long way. And I think the people in the class, when it resonates more when you've done the same job that they've done as well.
Sure.
Again, not saying that the guys that haven't done it can't teach you a ton. They absolutely can. But they can sometimes maybe overcomplicate things because they haven't actually been in the environment that we've been in, walked in the shoes we've been in, dealt with Fourth Amendment considerations, civil liability consideration, agency policy problems, public perception problems, all these things that are constantly going through an officer's mind that this person has never felt before. And it's just different. And I think a lot of newer age cops are starting to highlight that more.
Yeah. I think too, there's enough experience out there now to where people that don't have experience, just like you said, I've learned a ton from people that don't have law enforcement experience that I've then applied in a law enforcement aspect. But again, there's plenty of people out there that have both. And if your idea of training is focusing on the time spent, your investment, whether that's, again, your monetary investment or your time investment, obviously you want to elevate yourself as quickly as possible. Like, hey, like, I mean, I'm not saying you can't, money burger your way into knowing everything, but you always want to be cognizant of where you're investing your time and money.
Yeah, and that's a major difference with law enforcement in general. Like, time is a huge commodity. Everyone has staffing issues right now. So when you get time off to take these courses, that's a big deal. Even if the course is free, it's a huge deal just for you to get off work oftentimes. So ensuring that the course that you're going through is going to actually be fruitful to you, that you can actually use operationally is important. And again, there's a ton of crossover between, competitive shooting, military CQB, cop CQB, and some people will say that's the same. I disagree a little bit. Maybe we get into that later, or a different time. But at the end of the day, cops are begging for good training right now. Sure. And many cops don't get the opportunity to get the training that they need. That's one of the problems with our profession. That's why we have viral videos that get put all over the internet, because it's usually because cops are untrained. Yeah. That's our mission with the EFC, is to train as many cops as we possibly can to hopefully stop viral videos. A good use of force is usually a boring use of force, and that's our objective. But to get there, you have to empower those officers with the proper tools, mindset, physical ability, and resources to achieve that end goal of having boring uses of force. No,
I totally agree. And I think from the perspective that you said about the instructors having that overall experience of all the other variables that need to be considered, I think is extremely important. And again, there's a lot of great people out there teaching some really good stuff. So always vet your instructors. That's kind of I've been saying that for years. You've been saying it for years, whether it's on my platform or your platform. It's incredibly important, because you can always make more money. You're never going to get your time back. So it's always important to invest your time. Kind of leading into the next topic about, what do you think, how important is it for someone to vet their instructor, but also how important is it for the instructor to stay relevant to the changing times, tactics, case law, and things like that? Because I think that's where you see a lot of guys have been teaching the same thing for 15 or 20 years, whether there's been case law considerations or obviously, new technologies come out. And I think it's incredibly important. So kind of what are your thoughts on instructors staying relevant in the space?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. So instructors staying relevant, right? I think many jurisdictions, many areas have that guy, and everyone knows who they are, because in their day, they were the dude, right? But that dude's still teaching the same stuff that he was teaching 15, 20 years ago when he started being the dude. And they're relying on, that product that's been successful for them for however long. And, the old souls at agencies are used to the guy because they've been around forever. Yet when new officers go to these courses, and like I have one of these guys in my area that I used to work at, they're coming back to their agencies worse, in my opinion. That example I'll give here without like calling out anyone specifically is like setting up no-win use of force scenarios for patrol officers. Like that's the quickest way to shut down a student is to give them a no-win scenario.
Yep.
And it's I gotcha scenario. No one likes it. And most of the time the officers are calling it out before they're even forced in the scenario, saying, I would never do this. This is not a realistic scenario. I would do X, Y, Z instead. And they're getting forced into this environment where they still lose. Like, and then you've lost the student for the rest of the course.
Agreed.
So again, I believe that's because the instructor hasn't stayed current with best practices in the industry. Every industry has best practices and they don't stay stagnant. And if you do stay stagnant, you start talking about that civil liability thing again, potentially criminal problems, right? Because criminal law changes all the time as well. You know, appellate courts change rulings. And then you have state law, obviously that changes constantly as well. Again, so many layers that cops have to think about on a shift basis, going through a Rolodex of how do I not get in trouble here. But vetting your instructors, look, once you've worked in law enforcement more than 3 months, once you get out of FTO, you start realizing you can get a piece of paper that says you're an instructor. That doesn't mean crap. It's a piece of paper that says you're an instructor, that you passed the course. In the military, similar as well. Like you can get an instructor certification in the military, and you can be a horrible instructor. Being a good instructor is more than just having the piece of paper that says you're an instructor. Sure. That's a piece of it, right? That's a lot of times that checks the liability box. Says, yeah, you can be teaching stuff, but it's so much more than that, in my opinion. It's having a depth of knowledge that if questions come up, you can explore with your student the answer together. Not just throw out an answer that works for you. No, explore with them, because not everyone's the same. Body types are different. They may wear their kit different. They might be left-handed, you're right-handed. Experience all these things and exploring with your student a solution and having such a depth of knowledge that you can find a joint answer together that falls within your set principles that hopefully you have set. And sometimes that's hard to vet, because like unless you have friends that have gone through the course that have experienced it, all you see is a piece of paper that says you're an instructor, whether that means you're a black belt or you're an instructor and whatever you are. Usually the good instructors, like word gets out like, hey, this dude's solid, and then it keeps on going. But there's plenty of them out there, right? They've build themselves as an instructor and they make a web page that says, hey, I have a company and I'm instructing, and like, yeah, this dude might not even have insurance, right? I mean, he's out here teaching high liability things. So. Sure.
No, that's a super good point. I think that there's a lot more to instructing than just a piece of paper. And I think that's been said. I feel like that's kind of been pushed amongst people who understand what that is. Obviously, new people coming up in the law enforcement profession they're just going to take orders from, go here, do this. This is the firearms training you're getting. No crossover. Everybody's in a silo. And so they think, oh, well, I need to get better at shooting. I'm going to go to a shooting guy. Okay, that's fine. But understand the profession is not just shooting. Mm-hmm. They're also going to go to things that they think are fun, not necessarily what they need. So giving somebody the ability to self-diagnose, or like giving them an opportunity for them to kind of self-diagnose and say, hey, what am I lacking in? Where do I need to go? What instructors do you recommend? And hence why, like, we always try to push other people. I know on my page and your page, we always try to push instructors that will make people more well-rounded.
Yeah. Again, this is a whole nother deep rabbit hole, which is getting out of silos and all that stuff with our instructors. Back on the instructor thing real quick, I think something that resonates better with newer officers and kind of the generation of officers that we have now. Everyone can complain about the new generation of officers. That's what you got, right? So you better learn how to lead these guys.
Yeah,
and as an instructor, you're a leader. And if you don't have humility, and if you don't have a personality, and if you can't relate to these guys, and break down these ego walls that our profession's had for forever, you're not going to connect with the student, which is the current modern law enforcement officer, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's actually an interesting point. As someone who taught newer cops, the issue that I was kind of coming into was the communication barrier.
Yep.
Texting, emojis, GIFs, memes is now a legitimate means of communication. And even when they were making initial contact, we were seeing issues with just being a person.
Interpersonal skills.
And the emotional intelligence, relatively somewhat low. I'm not saying all of them, but some of them, it was really tough to watch. Because that's not something you can just be like, hey, take this course and become an instructor in emotional intelligence, right? Unfortunately, that's not a real thing. It might be in the future, but it currently isn't right now. You know, and that kind of goes into my next kind of area about social media and the impacts that social media can have on use of force incidents. Because I think that you and I both know, being heavily involved in the social media side of things, that we really struggle with people misinterpreting context of post, people not reading the backstory of an actual critical incident before we even talk about it. You know what I mean? And so what are your thoughts on the importance of social media playing a role in the overall drama of the training environment?
Yeah. So like my,
take your time, no rush. I told you, Scott, it's going to be a good one. Did Sean distract you?
yeah, I was trying to get it so I could cut when he's done with that. So my interpretation of how social media is influencing like the kind of the modern training world, if you will, is like, again, we just talked about younger officers. Like that's how they receive information, is social media.
Absolutely.
And again, as kind of I was right in the middle of my career when I left full-time law enforcement. And so I could kind of relate to the old souls and the younger cops. And I prided myself on that to kind of connect that bridge. And again, whether you like it or not, that's what's occurring with them. So if you want the profession to still be good and move on, you need to learn how to deal with that. You can't run a company these days without having a social media presence, and you really can't run a training, anything, without having a social media presence for the most part, right?
Sure.
Because that's what the end users are looking at. With that being said, what goes viral on social media oftentimes is not at all good for training, right? Everyone has a 3-second dopamine hit that you have to see someone get jacked up in 3 seconds.
Sure.
And then you're like, oh my God, that was wild. I'm going to watch another 5 seconds. And then you better hit them again with a dopamine hit. And the context is oftentimes lost. It doesn't mean that the person that posted it or the group that posted it, that is actually a bad thing. But it in my opinion, it's your job, if you're running a training company and you have a social media presence that's large or even not large, right? People are still watching if you don't have a large social media presence, to add that context, right? As you have this massive thing that you can type in, put 4, 5, 6 paragraphs in there and try to put as much context as you can, because the guys that can't afford classes, right? Like they're living off $30,000 a year and they truly cannot afford a class.
Sure.
And their agency can't afford to send them a class. That's the best they have, right? So by adding that extra value and context to them, that could be life-saving for them, right?
Yeah.
Depending on, what technique we're talking about or whatever the scenario is. And honestly, as a trainer, like, you kind of signed up for this at this point in time. You're posting on social media, you're a trainer, put as much context as you can. It's impossible to have every bit of context, right? We've all had that.
Sure.
But like, do your best to put as much as you can in there. I personally feel like that's my job to do.
Yeah. I think it's our responsibility. I think it's incredibly important for us to understand the weight that instructors hold, not just you and I, but all instructors. If you're putting out, let's just life-saving or life-taking information, you want to be as accurate as you can. You want to give as much detail as you can. The guys at PolicePosts, JT, Pat, Joey, all those guys, they put as much context and input into these posts as much as possible. And of course, we're going to get the comments, oh, but this, that, and the other. Yeah, did you read this? No,
Most of the time they didn't read the caption at all.
Right, you said, because they're going to watch the video, they're going to go viral. And again, a lot of these other pages too, I say a lot because there's a lot of other pages that literally just post the clip for likes, shares, views, which is fine. Right. But the why behind the post, I think, is a deeper meaning of why your company or why your page actually exists. If you're just doing it for likes, clicks, and views, well, then we understand your priority. Like, we understand your mission.
And that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah, hey, dude, everybody, it's America, right? Yep. You can do whatever you want. That's not from a training standpoint. Just like you said, people who rely on the content to better themselves, do your due diligence and actually put in the time and effort to make the content correct or as correct as possible and valuable. And that's kind of what we strive for. I know that's what you and I strive for personally on all the platforms that we're associated with. And, that kind of goes into the whole drama side of social media. And you and I have seen this. And again, we're not calling anybody out, for the record. If you want to take a course with someone, you start following their content, you see their course, man, I think this guy's got some really solid stuff. I want to put it out there. Then you see this person start bashing other people. And this is where I kind of have an issue as well. You and I have talked about this offline. And I've even said this for years. It may get you attention and it may get you, comments and content to post on your page. But you're really doing a disservice to yourself when you do that, because now you're relying on someone else to make you look good when you should just make yourself look good. And sometimes that's very difficult for people because they may lack emotional intelligence or just really the know-how how to do it. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that, because I definitely did that in my younger years for sure. And then I just realized it was not good. It wasn't quality engagement. It was just, I spent more time answering comments and DMs about, oh, I can't believe, this guy said this and that. And instead of that, it's just like, well, just make better shit. Like, just do it better than the guy that you don't like or you don't like his tactics. Not that you didn't like them. You maybe don't like what they teach. Well, then show your way and make it better if you think it's better. And it might be better. Mm-hmm. And so I think, what are your thoughts on people who are kind of new into training and they see this kind of immature behavior? Let's really just call it what it is. Or unprofessional behavior. It's really going to push, at least in my opinion, I think it's going to push people away from wanting to say, hey, even though this guy has a ton of value, he's extremely vetted, a lot of experience, I don't want to be a guy that he posts on social media because I'm not good enough.
Yeah, I think, again, we keep talking about the generation of cop that we have right now. That's the guy that's going into school on the Super Bowl day.
Yeah, absolutely.
He better perform, right?
Right.
If I'm terrified to sign up for your course because of your persona on social media, because I don't want to not be able to perform on demand in front of you thinking, well, this guy absolutely demolishes people on social media. And if I don't meet this person's standard in real life, I'm just going to get crushed. My soul's going to get crushed because I want to be able to meet this guy's standard, right? Like they're not going to sign up for your course and then they're not getting any value out of what you could have given them, right? So, and again, you can call these officers soft, sure, maybe by old standards, but it's the officers we're dealing with today, right? So if you truly want to change the profession and as an instructor, it's your job to morph to your student, the way your student learns. It's our job to be a chameleon to them, not necessarily vice versa. People learn different ways. Humans learn different ways. Good instructors can be chameleons in different environments. Social media is, you don't want to use the word toxic because now that's controversial. People say toxic. Well, you're just being honest about things. Yes, there's a way to be honest about things and not be a complete dick about things.
Oh, right? Yeah, for sure.
Like a good instructor should be willing to have a conversation with anybody. I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody. I may even have my mind changed. I've had my mind changed plenty of times. If you never have your mind changed about anything, you're not evolving, right? You're not learning new things.
So true.
Right?
Yeah.
So, throughout my career, I've gone from doing tactics one way and gone to another way and back kind of the other way. And new technology comes out and now we implement that. And we're like, well, how do we morph that into our application? Same with combatives,
Sure.
Like when I first started law enforcement, jiu-jitsu wasn't very prevalent in law enforcement combatives. I started as a blue belt as a cop. So in police academy, I was already a blue belt way before like jiu-jitsu. And I did a red man, and everyone in law enforcement knows what a red man is, right? It's like where you get to fight a guy and they hype this scenario up to be like, hey, this is like your big exercise that if you pass this, like you're going to be okay. It's the fight for your life type scenario. And I was like, cool. Cause like I train at an MMA gym and I get punched in the face as a hobby. So like, this is going to be a freaking blast is what I was thinking. So they ran me through first. They do that intentionally now that I've seen the other side of the house where I've been the red man. The guy they think is going to be the problem, they put in first. That way the red man's fresh.
Right.
With that, like, again, being a blue belt, having some wrestling experience and MMA experience, I was like, I'm not going to stand up with this guy. This guy's, one's a monster. Most red men are freaking monsters, right?
Right.
That's
intentional. Of course.
I was like, all right, blast double. not optimal for law enforcement. I get that, but that's what I knew at the time.
Right.
Blast double, took the guy down. They immediately stood us up because I was starting to maul him on the ground. Stood us up. All right. Squares up. He took a swing at me. I was like, nope, screw that. Blast double, took the guy down. I did that 3 times. They stood us up every time. And I was starting to get mad about it. Like, I've got this guy in my world where I want him, but yet I've got to stand up. So they throw me the baton, which everyone knows it does red man. Like, you're going to get the baton. When you drop that baton hand, you're going to get blasted in the face, right? That's just what happens.
Right.
I got blasted in the face. I threw the baton, blast double, took him down. Like, why are we setting up scenarios for cadets that aren't even police officers yet, that are, again, no-win scenarios? I'm not against, like, red man scenario where, like, a guy gets tagged or something like that.
Sure.
That's one thing. But if a student's winning, why screw that up?
Let them win.
Like, it was dumb in my opinion. And again, I was done with it, and obviously I won the scenario and became a cop. But that's an example of legacy teaching mechanisms that probably need to be changed to more modern ways. There's better ways to recreate live scenarios,
Sure.
To where the student gets a good look of pressure testing, if you will, resistance, without having to stand up anytime the fight hits the ground. Like, if you're capable of holding a 240-pound 6'3" man on the ground, as at the time I was like a $170, 5'10", like, you're probably going to be okay on the job.
For sure.
Right. So that's my perspective there in relation to kind of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think a little bit of the older instructor mentality of, just like you said, you got the guy on the ground right where you want him, stand back up. It's extremely frustrating, especially as a new officer. And what are you going to do? Talk back? Like, no,
I'm going to do whatever he tells me to.
Right. You're going to do exactly what they say. And so what are they doing to you as a young officer? They're imprinting that in you to say, okay, now that's what should happen. Because again, like, you kind of knew a little bit more about combatives than most because of your experience and your training. But like, if you do that to just the normal police officer, they're going to think that's the norm. So what are they going to do? They're going to start doing that when they become an instructor. That just becomes a evolution of ego, not progress. And that's a problem. And that's now the battle we're fighting. Jay always says he's not here with us. God bless his soul. But it's like the wheels of justice move slowly, right? Like, it's like a broken police model. Like, you hear that all the time. And that's a huge part of it, is just that slow understanding of like, how quick can we get these officers trained? That's what they're thinking about. You can do it in a pretty quick amount of time, but now you can do it a different way that actually is beneficial, that can be objectively viewed with data and recording. Okay, now that we have data, we can now alter our training this way. Instead of be like, this is the way we've always done it. Well, that's not data. That's completely subjective, right? Because you could look at that and say, well, this isn't working. It's obviously not working. This agency over here is doing this. They're having great results. They're documenting their results. So, I think your personal experience, I think, is a great example of the broken police model. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's again, we all have our own experience and we all learn from that. But the no-win scenarios in the police academy, guy pops out of a trunk with a shotgun, like first traffic stop ever.
Right.
So now what do you think as a new cop? There's a dude in a Caprice with a shotgun every time you walk up to the car.
Yeah, it's wild, especially those scenarios.
Sure.
I think what you find in many academies across the country is you get your older officers or your retired guys. This is now their retirement gig, and they got their instructor certification probably midway to a third through their career. Sure. So now 20 years ago. And it's not like they do this stuff as a hobby. They just have the piece of paper through whatever state entity that they work with that says they're an instructor. And they're not staying up to date with best practices. Probably not even case law either, based off of some of the things I've seen, which is absolutely freaking wild that we have public institutions, i.e. community colleges or wherever your police training occurs at, that brings these people in when they're teaching stuff that, like, you're going to get officers in a bind if an officer reinvents this in real life scenario.
Sure.
also like instructors that put things on cops that like just tell war stories nonstop, to me is a defense mechanism trying to show their clout. And like, unfortunately, we're seeing this come to light with another kind of industry, maybe we could say, to where like you did your time, as we'll say, as a cop, we'll say in the military. That's enough, right? Like you were a badass by anyone's, you did the deed, right? You went overseas, you served, all this jazz. You don't need to embellish anything, guys. Like everyone's still going to think you're an OG, you're a badass, right? Sure. It's I think folks they like the attention from the student or their audience, and then things maybe start getting over embellished.
It sells
because it sells, and no one's vetted them before, as we discussed earlier. And then when things start getting vetted, things start falling apart. I think the current generation of cops is tired of seeing that. Of whatever your profession, your OGs are,
agreed,
over embellishing their war stories. Because again, me being right in the middle of my career, having some military experience and significant law enforcement experience, like I can smell bullshit a mile away at this point, and if it doesn't check out, like you're done to me. Like,
yeah, I totally agree, and I think my thought process there is, what problem are you solving today?
Yeah,
like you have all this experience, that's great, and I appreciate you. Thank you for your service, but what are you doing now?
Right.
Are you selling snake oil? Are you selling stuff? Are you solving problems that you created,
right,
to sell something? If that's the case, then you're not really solving problems. So what problem are you solving today? Like, again, I 100% agree with you. Like OGs, badass, great stories. And those stories are great for situations like this on a podcast.
Yeah.
But if I'm paying money to learn something from you, I don't want to hear a 45-minute war story if we have
correct
only 8 hours together or 16 hours together. Yeah. I want reps. I want reps. And then again, maybe at dinner we can have that conversation. You can sell me your clothing line or your piece of gear later, right? Like, but I'm coming to learn from you. And again, no hate on the business side. I totally agree. Like, you need money to run a business. There's no issues there, but are you legitimately solving a problem?
Yeah, one thing that's even worse to me is when you're telling other people's stories to bring up your own clout. Like you didn't even do that. You're saying another guy did that, but you're telling their war story for what reason? To like make yourself sound cooler. I've seen that before as well, and it's like, man, you're not impressing anyone in this room.
Sure.
Most of the time when that occurs. Right. And again, stories, in my opinion, are for around a campfire, over a drink or an adult beverage, something like that. Yeah, we can shoot the shit back and forth. It's not for a bunch of impressionable students that probably already think you're a badass. You don't have to prove it anymore.
Agreed. And I think to that point too, we talk a lot about the physical risk that come with subpar or poor training, but also the mental ramifications of subpar training and the impact that can make. With all the mental health issues going on in the first responder community and even in the military community. What are your thoughts? And I'll tell you mine after, but the lack of training or the lack of quality training impacting one's mental health. Because a lot of times I was in an incident and then I was never the same after, or I saw something and I was never the same after. And again, this job is not normal. Mm-hmm. The law enforcement profession, there's nothing like it, at least to my knowledge or my experience, any other profession. People aren't calling you to come to a barbecue. I said this before. They're calling you to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And that problem could be anything from my cat stuck in a tree to my husband just killed all our kids.
Yeah. I could probably take a notepad and probably have a 2-hour talk about mental health on its own.
Sure. We can do that. I have a studio now.
Yeah. This is a fun fact. So like, the military started addressing, in my opinion, mental health far earlier than law enforcement did, right? The law enforcement guys have been dealing with it just as long, right? It's just never been addressed. You can't tell me that they haven't been dealing with it. So I think the military, it's not as much of a taboo anymore in the military to talk about it a little bit.
Sure.
It's almost encouraged. And I think people still mind their P's and Q's with it because they're scared of like, hey, if I truly tell this shrink how I feel, are they going to take my guns away? Am I going to lose my livelihood? Am I going to, in the military have to, leave my unit and go seek therapy, all this stuff. I think those, sometimes you overthink that. A good command's not going to let that happen. Unfortunately, we don't always have good commands. But with that said, I'll speak on the law enforcement specific side. You cannot do this job and not see fucked up things. You're going to, and you're going to see them very early before you even get out of field training.
Your first year,
you're going to see some jacked up stuff.
Yeah.
That no one wants to see. Part of your job is responding to motor vehicle accidents. You're going to see dead people in cars.
Oh yeah.
You see people ejected from cars, motorcycles. Look
Mangled.
like a bag of hammers when they land. Right.
Sure.
Throughout my career, I saw many of these things. Like you can't even recall them all because it almost becomes like you're desensitized to it. You get desensitized to death. So on face value, you don't think it's affecting you. But then when you start to unpack it later on, it is affecting you. Everything from, seeing a dead kid, like that affects me today. Sometimes it's weird things. You don't even think it would affect you. And maybe it doesn't affect other officers. One thing that affected me that I didn't even think would, which is weird. It was towards when I was getting ready to leave. So I was a sergeant, and there's an overdose call, which is common these days. Like,
sure,
people are overdosing on everything, it seems like. Divorced, dad lived at one house, mom lived at another house, but they had kids together, right? So the kid, they were at school, thank God, when this occurred. The dad had OD'd on the toilet, very common spot. And as I was there doing supervisor stuff, make sure all the right boxes are checked and stuff like that, I just walked in the kids' room because I was on the phone with my boss, right, giving them the update. And on that wall, the kid had a Boy Scout uniform hanging up. And I was in Boy Scouts, I was an Eagle Scout. And seeing that, like, I started thinking of that kid. And I could relate to the kid because I was in Cub Scouts too. And I was like,
sure,
like I knew what all of his patches were. Like, I grew up in the same areas I worked. So like I knew the council that he was in and like all that stuff. And like, it broke me in the moment because, I thought to myself, this is the last day this kid had a dad. He's at school right now, but when he comes home today, this kid no longer has a dad for the rest of his life. And yeah, that broke me. I stayed in that room for a minute and got myself together.
Sure.
And I was like, all right, we got a job to do still. But, and that's an example of like, sometimes you don't know how it's going to hit you. And then it whacks you upside the head and you're like, holy crap, man.
Yeah. My, one of my last calls on patrol was a 11-year-old girl who had drowned, and we recovered her in the river. And my sergeant at the time had a 11-year-old girl, and he couldn't even go.
No.
He was like, hey, can you confirm? Yes, sir. When it confirmed, didn't bother me. Had my first kid.
Yeah. It's a problem.
Real bad.
And I think if you have a tight squad, or I say a tight squad, when I became a supervisor, that's something I became aware of. Like,
sure,
hey, who on my squad has children? What are the age of those kids? Because I'm going to divert them if it's one of these.
Yeah.
Because I already know how this is going to play out. They're not going to do well.
No, they're not.
And most squads are well-rounded, right? You have people that don't have kids. Like, it sucks. It's still going to suck for them, but it's going to suck less for them than this dad who's probably not going to be able to make it through this call. I wasn't good on like military type calls. Early in my career, went to a suicide of a Marine vet who I had a conversation with 2 weeks prior where he was contemplating taking his life. And I sat in his living room. He had his gun there. He was drinking. We had a conversation like we're having,
sure,
right? My supervisor at the time, he was like, man, you were just in the Marine Corps not long ago. Like, can you talk to him? I was like, absolutely. Like, that's what you do, right? And we ended on good terms. Like, you good? You good? I left him with his gun, right? Because like I know how I would react if you tried to take my gun, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna find another way to do it, right?
Sure.
And then on night shift, we got a call over to the house. Neighbors found him, and he didn't do it with the gun. He did it other ways. But the guy had his dress blues hanging up, and my supervisor is like, hey, this is why having emotional intelligence as a supervisor is important.
Incredibly important.
He asked me if I could tell him what all the ribbons on the uniform meant. And he knew damn well I was just talking to this guy 2 weeks ago. Like, yeah, I've got a job to do, and this is part of it, but like, don't ask me to translate all this crap to you when I had a little bit of a personal connection with this guy. Yeah. And now I'm feeling the burden that he still did it after I thought he was good, right? So emotional intelligence, for supervisors is super important for your officers' mental health long-term, and understanding each one of your officers and what are their triggers, or try to find out their triggers. That means having a little bit of a personal relationship with them. That means you got to be their friend.
Sure.
But you need to be able to be personable with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think being human.
Yeah. It's not just stripes on your shoulder.
It's not, dude. It's truly not. And it goes so much far beyond the profession. I actually had a conversation with Mike Edwards, Mike the cop, about this. He worked in a Detroit area, so high crime area. I'm sure he saw a lot of things as well. And he was even talking about how some cops have no guidance even on the job, and that impacting their mental health. They have no outlet outside of their sergeant. Just do your job. It's like, yeah, I got it. But like, yeah, like, and it's just said, like, some people are like, oh, quit being soft. And I think it goes far beyond being soft. It's more of it's almost an unconscious response in our brain. Like, I saw a dead 11-year-old girl. It sucked at the time, even when I didn't have kids. And then when I had kids, it just like a whole other door opened in my brain. And I was like, holy shit. And it just like you said, it didn't impact me now. But when it did hit me, it was a punch in the face. It was the hardest punch in the face I've ever had.
Yeah.
And like, I get emotional about it now because I'm like, I got 4 kids.
Yeah.
And first thing I did was like, you're 3 months old, swim lessons.
Right.
Everybody's taking swim lessons, and every single kid can swim. Except for the twins because they're 1, but like, they're in swim lessons. I told my wife, it's not optional. I will work extra to pay for that. Like, it's so that's how it impacted me. Because now, let's say the intrusive thoughts occur, right? Because of kind of what we see, and you seeing that Marine veteran, like, and your sergeant, your supervisor putting that on you, like, that's going to stay with you your entire life.
Oh yeah, it definitely does.
And like that's not cool.
Yeah, and again,
Literally.
there's a job to do. Like, that call is going to jack me up regardless. Like, just is what it is.
Yeah.
But it jacked me up more than it needed to, right? I think that's something that's a little bit different, in my opinion, because all of mental health is controversial too, unfortunately. The military side of the house and kind of law enforcement, each branch kind of had their deployment cycles. The Marine Corps was 6-7 months ish. And then the armies have longer deployments during the GWAT and whatnot. When you're in country, yes, you're hypervigilant. You're seeing things. You're dealing with friends' losses, lots of different things. And you come home and you generally can kind of unpack things a little bit. And you're surrounded by, your guys still, right? So you can vent to each other and stuff like that. Sure. I did find that in law enforcement, like, it seems to always come in waves, unfortunately, in my experience. But like, every day you're hyper vigilant as part of your job, and oftentimes, like, multiple times a week, you're seeing things that are not normal. And now that's throughout a 30-year career, potentially, depending on your state or your agency. At a minimum, a 20-year career, even federal. That's a long time to be in a profession of you're just seeing jacked up stuff on a regular basis, and you're staying hyper vigilant as part of your job and your survival. At least that's the way you perceive it. And it's trained into you as like all these ambushes, basically people just coming up and, shooting cops and cars, stuff like that. That takes a toll on you, again, that you don't realize is taking on you, but in the back of that processor is constantly, when you're in Walmart parking lot doing your report, like, you're constantly being hyper vigilant. So it does weigh on you, and that's why I think mental health in law enforcement it's starting to get pushed more. It needs to continue to get pushed, and it needs to start at an academy level, getting cadets comfortable at talking with each other, themselves, and then also professionals if need be, and destigmatizing it. A thing that, some agencies have peer support. I think it's a common thing. It's your peers that work at your agency. That can do some good. I found myself, I wouldn't talk to the vast majority of people on that peer support list because I found that they were the biggest rumor mill spreaders at my whole agency. So why am I going to tell them my demons? Oh, yeah. And then I would have to go probably lose my job when that confidential word got out, right? So the people I talked to, typically weren't on there, but they were bros, right? So that's between them and I. There was one supervisor I had specifically that was very big on mental health. He was a former service member as well. So he dealt with his own problems as well from some calls he had been on. That individual is now a captain at my agency over patrol.
Love that.
And yeah, he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu too. So like,
love that even more.
Yeah, he's stud. Is a problem. But like, I appreciated him always checking me when it came to that too. Cause like you can put the kid gloves on, let it come out, but at some point you got to course correct it, right? And he had no problem course correcting. And I also appreciated him as a supervisor at certain parts of my career that we could have big boy conversations, and it wasn't personal. Like we would disagree in the office together, and we get loud sometimes. Like a sergeant or a master officer probably shouldn't be talking to a lieutenant that way,
right?
But we had the trust in each other that nope, we got everything out. We leave,
we're good,
and yep, we're good. And then we'd come back in the next day and we're like, hey man, what's up?
Yeah, like, I think that's honestly the best way to solve things, just to be super direct and super clear, but also know why you're doing that. It's not personal, right? For the most part, but also like you can still be friends after. You can still have this beneficial conversation, because that's honestly where growth comes from, to be honest with you, like within that relationship. So I think it's incredibly important. I think from the mental health side too, like even from a training standpoint, there's one video that comes in particular, and maybe we'll talk about that, in another episode or another time. But the reality-based training, the exposure, let's just talk about even just in jiu-jitsu, right? You get stuck on bottom side control enough, you're going to become, not really saying comfortable there, but you're going to know what the person's going to do on top, right? They may pop to you on belly, may go north-south, may try to go to mount, whatever the case may be. You know the possible routes they're going to take. If you're on the street and you don't train and somebody gets you in side control, you're not going to know what to do. You're going to panic.
Yeah.
You get, God willing, you live through that scenario, or you don't become critically injured. You should have a different perspective, right? You're probably going to. Some people don't. People are like, it worked out. I'm good. I'm just going to keep on going. That didn't happen for me. I had something happen. Some click, hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I was like, fuck. Literally, that's the only thing that went through my mind. Not, here's how to solve that problem. It was just, you're screwed if this guy does this. I have chills talking about it right now. Like that affected me mentally, to say, you are not prepared to handle now a wide variety of situations if it happens to go this way. You're by yourself. It's 2:00 in the morning. Backup's probably 15 or 20 minutes away. Can you fight 15 or 20 minutes, Adam? Well, I don't really grapple. I don't wrestle. I don't do karate or whatever was going through my brain at the time, Next day, I went straight to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I think most cops, males probably in general, have a false sense of how capable they are.
Yes.
Just in general, whether that's physical fitness-wise, fighting-wise, shooting-wise, whatever. I think males need to get more comfortable in general. Police officers should get more comfortable in general of being honest with themselves and their capabilities.
Agreed.
We're asked to do a ton of things. Like it's a scatterboard of things that we're asked to do. And sometimes people are hypercritical of police officers because of that. They're saying, well, you should spend more time on shooting, we'll say, or combatives, we'll talk our in our lane. And it's important as trainers and as instructors to understand, like, yes, that is very important, but there's also things that these guys are being mandated to do, and there's only so much time in the day for these guys to do it. So get off your high horse and kind of try to relate to where some of these officers are coming from. And again, start them early in these things, make it more of a habit formed at an academy level, whether that's dry fire or whether that's doing combative-based drills for that movement. I didn't know how much I didn't know until I was in the Marine Corps, and I went through a thing called a cohesion room, which is like they put you at they put you in scenarios that you're going to go to muscle failure, whether it's holding a 25-pound weight in front of you, sitting on a wall, then go to the next station, then Superman on a bench with 15-pound dumbbells, and you're just getting cooked, and then you have to go fight someone at the end of it who's fresh. And you get mauled, right?
Of course.
But you're instilled in the Marine Corps, like you're not going to fail. Like you're a tough guy, like all motivated and stuff like that. And then you get absolutely mauled, and it kind of breaks you down. Like, okay, there's some problems here. I guess sometimes it takes that for a hard-headed person to hit that wall and realize, like it happened with you, that I'm not as capable as maybe I thought I was, or I just met my opposite number that day. Like everyone has an opposite number. Doesn't matter what your skill level is. And then going to seek that additional training. I'll say this: cops that go to jiu-jitsu and are still full-time cops, I have the utmost respect for. Like, it is freaking tough to work 5 days a week, 12-hour shifts, have a family, and then find time to go to a 2-hour jiu-jitsu class twice a week on a regular basis. It is a huge commitment. So again, some jiu-jitsu guys are like, well, what's your excuse? This, that, and another. Like, yes, they should prioritize that, but like, you guys have no clue. Like, balancing a family life, a shift life, staying late, having to forced overtime, forced off duty at some agencies, plus collateral duties if you're on a team, stuff like that. Like, you guys have no clue. But the guys that, in my opinion, that truly take it seriously, you can find time. If you prioritize anything, you can find time.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much information out there of how to become better at anything, right? I think, we talk about jiu-jitsu, but even the fitness guys, like the cops that are in shape, right on.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, hey, I know how hard it is to meal prep. Yes. I know how much time it takes to look the way you do or to get as strong as you are. I know how it takes to not want to work out after shift, but you do it anyways because you have to do it, or even go wake up early before shift and then go. So, I think there's something to say about the cops that, I don't want to say overperform, but do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, the public expects us to perform at a very high level.
Sure.
We signed
perfection.
Perfection.
They expect perfection.
Correct.
Right?
So we signed up for this job, and that may be an unrealistic expectation from the public, right? But you signed up knowing that was going to be the expectation.
Sure.
Right? So you should be trying to get as close to it as possible within reason, without keeping your mental health intact and all these things. Fitness can take you a very long ways by itself. If you are just more physically fit than the criminal, most of the time you're going to be okay, right?
Correct.
You're just going to be able to overpower this guy or girl and do what you need to do. It's when you meet your opposite number or the situation or environment, which that always gets a vote. Like, we work in uncertain circumstances, like i.e. shithole houses where we're not in a perfect mat room, right? It's when that happens that you better have a higher level of training. Or when the suspect does something that is not physical in nature, that takes skill or a technique to deal with, i.e. a gun grabs your vest, things like that. I don't care how much muscle you have. If I grab you over your outer carry and you don't know how to deal with it, you're not getting me off of you.
Right.
You're not getting me off of you.
It's a problem.
So having a base in fitness and supporting that base with solid combatives and other hard skills, and I think where cops need to be. You have to be serviceable in those hard skills first, and then you can start deep diving down these other rabbit hole specialty type things like your CQBs, in my opinion, like your DUIs, your domestic violence officers, all that. Those hard skills should be in place prior to diving down those other rabbit holes.
Sure.
Because those are the things that bring you home at the end of your shift, and that the public truly on game day cares about.
Yeah,
right?
No, I agree.
They call us for a reason, is to handle a situation. The highest priority of those situations is a physical confrontation or a deadly force environment.
Right. No, I 100% agree. And I think, we talked about family life and the time it takes to train to become proficient in a multitude of various skills that society demands perfection in. And I think having a plan and being able to strategize your weaknesses, let's just say, to objectively view yourself. And I use that word object. I actually got made fun of on the internet for saying the word objectively too much. The meme was subjective, but objectively, it was actually pretty funny. But I'll say this, that it's important to be able to self-diagnose where your weaknesses are and know that you need to put effort in other areas. Ego, time, obviously, maybe some money issues, but a lot of the stuff that cops can get good at isn't necessarily going to break the bank. Talk about fitness, for example. You don't need much to get in shape. Nutrition is incredibly important, right? So you can strategize nutrition, meal prep. Meal prep is not that difficult. You can Google meal prep recipes. And literally, you'll have a billion pop up. You know what I mean? And then from a fitness or programming standpoint, like it's pretty easy to be able to just go on the app or go pick a program, find out your workouts, and just freaking knock those out, right? It's not that difficult. But again, if you're overweight, maybe focus on losing weight. If your biggest threat's a gust of wind, maybe focus on putting on some muscle, right? And that's another talking point real quick. Whether you're overweight or you're super skinny or super small, like those are both equal problems. It's just, I just kind of want to be clear. Because not every problem, like, and then I think Pat made a post about this. He posted like 2 different cops and it was like, they're both the same problem. And it's like, oh, well, I'd rather have a guy that's skinny because he's really scrappy. And I'm like, but what if the problem is picking your partner up off the ground and moving him? Then it's not a fighting problem. It's a strength and endurance and mobility problem. So how are you solving that problem? And so just being well-rounded, I think, is critically important for overall health. And I think you said it best, is it's just the foundation. Setting those hard skills and developing those is going to easily translate over into the tactics, into the critical thinking. Like I think you can teach a lot of the critical thinking in training. Some of it is kind of a natural flow. But like, just like what we do at EFC, like this isn't a step. Hey, if he does this, then you do this. Yeah, but he may not do exactly this. So you're gonna have to critically think, am I staying within the principles and concepts of the curriculum or just of general knowledge of combatives or grappling, whatever you want to call it. And you're probably more than likely going to get the same result, which is probably going to be a successful outcome. So from like your perspective of, or what you've even personally done, how do you strategize your fitness? Because you're on the road a lot still now, even though you're not active full-time cop now, you're still reserved. But like, how do you strategize your fitness, your meal prep, your combatives training, all while Jay keeps you incredibly busy?
Yeah. So
thanks, Jay.
Yeah, no, it's good. So I'll say when I was a cop, I was lucky enough to work at an agency that had a nice gym.
Love that.
Not every agency has that luxury, but it is becoming more prevalent as I'm teaching around the country. I'm seeing this more and more. The thing that honestly started helping me was like 2.5, 3 years ago. I'd worked out ever since the Marine Corps. Your standard workouts. I lifted weights, raw movements, money muscles, all the important things in life, right? Got to get the chicks.
Always.
But
beach body.
What I realized as I started to get a little bit older, I've been in the profession a little bit longer, like the money muscles, like they're great to look at, but like functionality wise, they're really not that great, right?
Don't tell Matt Green that.
Yeah. Don't kill me.
Please, or me.
What kind of restarted my fitness journey. I'd never stopped working out.
Sure.
But I got access to, honestly, the EFT app. And I started dabbling with it some. And at first I was just like, all right, let's see what this thing's about here. Okay. Don't know how to do that lift. Oh, wait, there's a video here for me to do that lift. Let's check this guy out. Oh, okay. That's not that hard. I'll try it. It started lightweight. And then I started following it for quite a long time. And like, you could start seeing the growth, right?
Sure.
In the different programs. And for me, it was enough of an accountability partner within the app to know that like, that workout was there. It dumbs down your workouts. It's just there for you.
We're not the smartest guys. Let's be real here.
No, like it's like I show up to the gym. What am I doing today? That looks like it's going to suck, but I'm already in here. I would never look at the workout before I was already in the gym because I might talk myself out of it. Yeah. And then I'd go to work. And that personally helped me, just having that pre-programming already there. What was beneficial for me. What works now is one, you have to be, like, my current schedule is really weird. I mean, airports a lot. I skip lunch when I'm on the road because I'm rolling. And then at night, like, I've been teaching all day. So like there's emails to catch up on, things like that. And, fast food is easy to get. I don't eat fast food very often. So what I do is in the morning, I don't eat a heavy breakfast in the morning. Usually it's yogurt, toast, and peanut butter, and then a coffee. I'm a coffee snob, and then I'm going to drink an energy drink right at the beginning of the course. Like, that's just what I do every morning. Lunch or throughout the day, I'm snacking on nuts, like a nut mix, just to keep some calories going, some clean oils with those nuts. And and then some like clean beef jerky that isn't like over processed type stuff.
Sure.
I snack on that constantly throughout courses as well. And anyone that's been to a course with me knows I'm like walking around with a beef jerky bag sometimes, like slamming them.
Same, yeah.
And then when I get home, we go home and shower, all that stuff after the day's course. And then we actually try to go find like a real restaurant with real food. And either get chicken, beef, something like that, and then support it with some carbs. Because you don't realize how much teaching takes out of you being on your feet on the mats all day, but like you're burning through carbs rapidly. As far as workouts, when I'm on the road, I try my best to go in the mornings because I know myself after teaching all day and talking all day, like I'm cooked most of the time. So if I don't go in the morning, I'll talk myself out of it in the afternoon. So when I'm on the road, I try to go 2 to 3 times during the week to local gyms. Usually we're in towns that have chain gyms that I can get into for relatively cheap. And then as far as jiu-jitsu, when I'm on the road, we have open mats at lunch. So that's a constant. You're going to get 4 rolls or 3 to 4 rolls a week guaranteed. And then usually I'll try to go out once during the week for like a different class.
Sure.
Depending on how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling run down, I'm not going to push it because like once you get to a point of like you're getting run down, if you do push it, your immune system, you're going to crash, and then that affects my students the next day, right?
Sure.
And my biggest priority right now is making sure that student, that cop, gets the best product that I can and give to them, right?
Yeah.
That's my job to do. It's my duty to do. It's why I came to this company, because that's my passion. And if me being selfish and going to, 3 jiu-jitsu classes a week and like my body's not up to it, that's on me. That's me being selfish just because I want to go play jiu-jitsu, right? Sure. As far as the other hard skills, I don't take that lightly either. I dry fire when I'm on courses, which is weird sometimes. And sometimes you have to get creative with things.
Sure.
To not get in trouble places. But I do that the vast majority of the time, 2 nights a week, roughly 15 minutes-ish. It's easy to dry fire.
It's free.
Yeah, you don't need anything special to do. You can play with outlets on the wall, like all kinds of stuff.
That's my go-to.
Post-it notes work great. You can get creative. And it does help. I didn't always dry fire throughout my career. I was a firearms instructor. I had a piece of paper that said I was a firearms instructor. Didn't dry fire to get it.
Must be an expert.
Yeah, I'm an expert in it. But I have noticed since I've started dry firing a couple years ago, like things have become easier, and it as far as my finding the dot immediately and where I look, that dot shows up at. That's the biggest thing. I know if I look at something, that dot's going to be there when I want it to be there, and it's just confidence. And right now, we need confidence in officers.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think you talked about one of the best topics about training smart and not necessarily hard. Because again, you can run, but you might be running in place. You're not going to have any forward progress. I think, again, basically the whole conversation, we talked about training efficiently, training optimally, and training for really what's realistic. And I think that it's an interesting facet, whether we're talking about fitness or combatives or shooting, whatever the case may be. You obviously want to be training smart. I think a lot of people get confused thinking that they need to train necessarily more. And that's where like, I need more gear. I need more time, I need more range time. And maybe you do. Maybe that is the thing. Maybe you do need better gear. Maybe you do need more range time. But at the end of the day, if your goal is to be well-rounded, it's almost impossible to give every single discipline the same amount of time. That's why that
never going to be a master in everything.
No, you're never going to be a master, but like and you use the word a lot, serviceable. You want to be serviceable in a lot of different facets because you're going to have to be. Because just like you said, you show up to the situation, hands-on problem is going to gun problem. Gun problem becomes a hands-on problem in a quarter of a second. And you need to be able to solve both of those wherever that situation decides to stop or end. Mm-hmm. And obviously you want to be on the successful side of it, not only from a critical incident it's happening now, but also from a report writing standpoint and a civil standpoint. Like you just want to make sure all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed, because it goes so much far beyond just the incident itself. We talked about, like the mental capacity, like that, the load that takes. And then also the mental load of even just deal with just like the legal side of things. you get into use of force, the likelihood of you getting sued is there, is probably going to happen at some point in time, right? Within your career, whether you get hemmed up by someone else or your own agency hems you up. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen it at guys that come to courses. You know what I mean? We've seen it to guys all over the internet. I get DMs all the time. I know JT does all the time about, hey, my agency did this to me. And it's like, obviously we're not out here giving legal advice on what to do, but we'll say, hey, look, if this happened, then you should probably, go seek legal counsel. So we think that's important as well. So, to kind of wrap it up a little bit too, just kind of on the fitness side, what are your thoughts on the importance of just staying disciplined within fitness, combatives, hard skill? Because it's really easy to become complacent. It's really easy to say, man, I just got done teaching for 8 hours, 9 hours, sometimes even 10 hours. I'm tired. The last thing you want to do is put on your running shoes, go in the gym, put on the gi, whatever the case may be, and do that. How do you have that mental fortitude to just always push forward? And again, within reasonable stuff. I think people are like, oh, I'm just going to do it because David Goggins told me to stay hard. And it's like, yeah, dude, but like the dude's got double knee replacement surgery coming soon. Like I also want to live till, I also want to be able to pick up my kids when I'm 80 years old. So, or I guess my kids, or even my kids when I'm 80 years old. But yes, so what are your thoughts on that from just like a discipline standpoint?
Yeah, I think for myself, this is what worked for me. And it's okay if what works for me doesn't work for you. I think we need to be okay with, back to the instructor topic, just because it's not working for me, it's not my preference, doesn't mean we have to be mortal enemies, right? On things. We can still think each other we're great guys, whatever, you're net positive for the profession, and we don't have to agree on everything. I don't agree with 100% with anyone. I don't think anyone does,
Yeah, agreed.
Right?
Yeah,
so,
same.
But I don't hate many people, and I don't attack people because I disagree with them. If I respect you, I'm actually going to probably DM you and ask you a question if I disagree with you. And I think the profession needs a little more humility and professionalism like that.
That's wild, Scott. Well, why would you say such a thing?
Yeah, because I don't care to just
absolutely
drop nuclear bombs on
atrocious.
people. Yeah.
Let's make a meme and provide no value instead. I think that's probably better.
You should definitely just make fun of people all day and not provide any solutions to those people.
You're right.
Anyways, so what works for me is setting a routine. I'm a creature of habit. It's probably some of the Marine Corps stuff early on, you become a creature of habit.
Sure.
And that's what works. So if I set that tone and that schedule, I will follow it and I'll do things. Again, the dry firing at night when I'm on trips, that's a creature habit type thing. Going to the gym in the morning, I do that on my off weeks. I still go to the gym in the morning.
Sure.
So I don't break that. I go a little later on my off weeks than I do when I'm on. But I think cops are the same way. We work shift work, so your body is used to being regimented with that shift work. Some agencies, you don't have the luxury of going to the gym while you're on duty because when you check on, you've got stat calls right from the get-go, right? So you have to prioritize, am I a morning person? All right, I'm waking up an hour early, become that creature of habit. Or, okay, maybe I'm not a morning person, but maybe I'm up to 11:30 on my phone, even on work days when I got to be up at 5 a.m. How about from 10 to 10:45, I'm doing something positive, net
Sure.
positive. And you can just reserve that time. You don't have to spend 6 days a week in the gym, but reserve time to get better and better yourself. So that reserve time, 2 days a week, I'm dry firing for this amount of time. 3 days a week, I'm doing something physical for this amount of time. This day can be a rest day. Play on your damn phone, play your video games, whatever you want to do.
Sure.
This day is reserved to, maintenance, clean stuff, whatever it is, set your schedule, but that time is your time to better yourself. And again, we're in a profession that you're expected to put in work outside of work. Signed up for it. That's what being a professional does. Yeah. You're never going to find I don't say you never, you're more than likely not going to find a high-level TAC guy, whether mil, law enforcement, whatever, that doesn't constantly put in time outside of work, shooting, maintaining gear, screwing with gear, researching gear, messing with TTPs, going out with their buddies and wargaming things, and anything in between, right? it takes a different breed sometimes, and finding someone to look up to sometimes helps as a young officer.
I can't tell you how important that is.
Yeah,
I can't tell you the importance of that.
Finding that salty officer, I say salty, long tooth officer in your agency that isn't retired on duty, that's not the guy you want to look up to, even though they're usually the loudest in the room and want to tell you all their war stories. Find the guy that has some humility and who's also been there and done that, who's also the guy you still want to be your check-in when you're in the fight for your life. That's your role model. Yeah. And ask them what they did.
Yeah, that's an incredibly important topic that I think we could definitely reserve for another conversation, the importance of mentorship within the law enforcement profession and within life. Having someone who's maybe encountered a problem that you're encountering now and how they solve that or something they use, I think is incredibly important. So, I think we discussed a lot here in this 45-minute-ish. John, how much?
Over an hour.
Perfect. I said 30 minutes, but that was on the original side. So yeah, for those listening, we have a whole room of people here. So if Scott and I look like we're a little hyper vigilant watching Sean leave, I was like, Eve walk around, Matt over here picking his nose. Just kidding, Matt, would love you. So yeah, no, this was awesome. This was the first time in the studio, Scott. Thank you for breaking it in with me. I appreciate it. I'm glad it was you and not Jay. I'll say that. I'll say that out loud. Yeah. I appreciate Jay and all he does, but where is Jay right now? Do we know where Jay is?
Yeah, he's driving home from a level 2.
Perfect. Yeah. I'm glad he's doing that. All right. Well, you and I will be in South Carolina next week teaching at the Criminal Justice Academy there, and you're going to stay there.
Yep. Teach the level 2 the week after.
All right. Yep. Until next time. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.